Alright guys, welcome back to AWS Simplified, the place where I teach you everything there is to know about AWS. And today we're going to be talking about DynamoDB Streams. And we're going to do a step-by-step guide, and I'm going to show you how to detect change on a DynamoDB table using a Lambda function. So let's get started. So firstly, let's do a quick architecture overview. So we're going to start with a DynamoDB table, and I'm going to name this table Game Events. And the table's content is going to look like this. So we're going to have a player ID, we're going to have a date, we're going to have a game round ID, and a score. And the primary key is going to be the player ID, and the range key is going to be the date. And from there, we're going to add a Lambda function, and I'm going to call it the Game Events Processor Lambda function. And I'm going to code it up so that it can detect change from the DynamoDB table, and this is what the input is going to look like. So this is what a change event looks like. So there's a records array, and each of these objects here is a change event. So just taking a quick glance at this, so there's an insert here, so this corresponds to an insert event. And if you recall from last time, there's three types of events: the insert, modify, and remove. So if we look a little bit further here, you can see in the DynamoDB, in the new image section, we have all of the corresponding attributes of the newly inserted row that corresponds to this event. So you see the player ID was this value, the date was this value, the game round ID was this value, and the score was this value. Okay, so then from there, we need to actually attach some permissions to our Lambda function so that it can interact with the game events table. So we're going to go to IAM, and we're going to create a new role. And I'm going to call this role the DynamoDB Stream Lambda role. And the role needs a couple permissions that are associated with it. So the four main ones are these four here. So describe stream, get records, get shard iterator, and list streams. These are the absolute minimum that you need in order for this to hook up and work correctly. If you don't add these, things aren't going to work. And for me, I want to do some logging and do some testing to make sure this is actually working correctly. So I'm adding some extra permissions for CloudWatch. So create log group, create log stream, and put log events. After we create the policy and associate it with this role, we're going to attach that role to the Lambda function so that the Lambda now has all these permissions associated with it. From there, we're going to go ahead and hook up the trigger. And the trigger type that I'm going to set up for this exercise is the new and old images trigger. And if you forget what this is, please take a look at my old video where I explain this in detail. But basically, it shows us what the before and what the after images of the change look like. And then from there, I'm going to come along and start poking the database and triggering some of these change events. So we're going to do three types of change events. The first one's going to be the insert. So I'm going to be inserting this row into the table. I'm going to verify that we handle that insert successfully. And then I'm going to be doing a modify. And in the modify case, I'm going to be altering the score. So I'm going to be modifying the score to this new value here, 175. And then finally, I'm going to be removing the row and making sure that we get the delete event. So those are the three types of operations that we're doing, and this is what it's going to look like. Now let's head over to the console and get started. All right, guys, here we are on the console page. So the first thing I said I was going to do is create the DynamoDB table. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come over here, type in DynamoDB, going to select create table, and I said my table name is going to be called Game Events. And my partition key is going to be player ID, and my sort key is going to be date. If you don't know what these mean, I'm going to be doing a future video describing the details about DynamoDB, so look forward to that. So I'm going to go ahead and click create. And this is actually going to take a few moments to successfully create, so I'll come back once it's all done. Alrighty, so that took about a minute or so, but we can see here that we now have successfully created our game events table. Okay, so we're going to go to IAM because we need to create a role for our Lambda function in order to access the DynamoDB streams. So I'm going over to IAM and I'm clicking on roles, and we're going to create a role. So just a reminder, we need a couple DynamoDB stream permissions, and we also need some CloudWatch permissions. So I'm clicking on create role and choose the service that will use this role. So it's a Lambda function, and we're going to say next permissions. And there's actually a pre-built policy. So I typed in DynamoDB, and yes, so this one, AWS Lambda DynamoDB execution role. So if we click on this guy to expand it out and scroll down, we can see that this role has the exact permissions that we need. So describe stream, get records, get chart iterator, list streams, and then this stuff for CloudWatch. So this is exactly what we need. One thing I forgot to add here is that you need to click the checkbox beside the policy name and then click the Attach Policies button before proceeding to the Click Next at the bottom. So make sure you do that before proceeding. And I'm going to click Next. I don't care about tags, so I'm just going to skip that, and role name. So I'm going to call this DDB Stream Lambda role. And description, the boilerplate is fine. So I'm going to click on Create a role. All right, cool. So now our role is created. So let's head over to Lambda now, and we can actually create the function and associate the role with it. So going to Lambda and clicking on Create Function. And we're going to do this one from scratch. So I'm going to call this one the Game Events Processor. And from there, we're going to be using Python 3.6 for this exercise. And here's where we select the role that we just created. And I do not want to create a role. I want to use an existing role. And this should have our role. And there it is, the DynamoDB Stream Lambda role that I just created. And we're going to click on Create Function. And this will take, actually it was very quick this time. So our Lambda function is now created, right? So it has everything that it needs. So we need to code up our Lambda function now. So let's go ahead and switch to Sublime Text, where I'm going to be doing that. All right, folks, so I switched over to Sublime Text, and we have two panes here. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to be writing the Python code that's going to be the core of the Lambda function. And on the right-hand side, I just have some references. So I have three different references. I have an insert event reference. So this is what an actual insert event will look like on our DynamoDB table. I have a modify event that will look like this. And you can see there's a little distinction here. So we have a new image and an old image. So this is the what's there now, and this is the reference, so what was there before. That's the old image content. And in the remove event, all you have is the old image because there's nothing new anymore. Okay, so let's scroll back up here and let's start coding this up. So the first thing I did, just as a quick little reminder, I just wrapped the entire function in a try catch. This is very important. If you take a look at my previous video, I explained why it's important. But make sure to do this if you're creating a Lambda function and it's going to be hooked up to DynamoDB Streams. Okay, so let's start going here. So the first thing we need to do is we need to iterate over every record, right? Because there can be multiple records in the array. So iterates over each record. And I'm going to say for record in events records. Now here's where we handle the event type. So I'm just going to say handle events type. So we're just going to code up three quick functions, one for the insert, one for the modify, and one for the remove. So let's just write a couple of statements here. Record event name equals inserts. Then I'm going to handle, and I'm going to write this function afterwards. We're going to do the same for modify. And then we're going to have a modify handler. And these should probably be else ifs. And we're going to do the remove. And then once the invocation is done, I'm just going to print a just delimiter to help me out. And actually I'm going to do that at the top too, so we can figure out where we're starting and where we're ending. And also in the exception case as well. All right, cool. So now we need to actually code up these three handler functions. So the handle insert, handle modify, handle remove. So let's go down here and actually start doing that. So we're going to define handle insert, and it's going to take a record. And let's just say we are handling the insert event. Okay, so there's three substeps here. The first one is we need to get the content from the new image. So if we go over here and we look at the insert, so there's a new image key. So we need to grab all this stuff from the new image key. And then we need to parse out the value. So it's kind of got some awkward like DynamoDB notation. So you have the key here, and then you have S denoting that it's a string type. That's in comparison to N, where it corresponds to number. And then we need to actually grab the value, right? And then we'll just print it out. So 3 steps. Let me just, we'll say 3A. So get image content. 3B will be parse the values. And 3C is just print it out. Okay, so let's go through this one by one. So first thing is get the new image. So we're going to say new image equals record, DynamoDB, and then new capital N, new image. So now we have a reference to this object over here. Now that we have that, we can actually parse the value out. So I'm just going to be parsing out the player ID here for this exercise. So let's say new player ID is equal to new image. So we need to grab the player ID, and then you can see the S key here to actually grab the value. So we say S. And so now we have a reference to the player ID, and now we just need to print it out. And let's just say new row added with player ID equal to plus the new player ID, right? And finally, let's just wrap it up down here and say done handling insert events. Cool. All right, so that's good for our insert. So let's do the modify now. So let's just scroll down here so we can take a look at the modify event. So as a reminder, you have the new image and the old image in the modify event. So the new image corresponds to what is there now, what is the most recent thing. And the old image is the reference object, so what has changed. So you can see here in this case, the old image contains a score that's 175, and the new image contains a score that's 150. So that's telling us that the score changed here. So that's exactly what I'm going to try to capture with this function. So we need to do handle underscore remove. This should actually say handle underscore modify, but I come back to correct it later. And then record. Scroll down, make this a bit easier. And from there, so we have 3 substeps again. So 3A is parse old image and score. And then 3B, since this is a modify event, we need to parse the new image and its score. And then we'll do like a quick little comparison to say something changed. Check for change. And I'm only going to be checking for change on the score field, but in your function, you may want to do something a little bit more comprehensive. And similar to the other one, let's just say handling modify events. And then at the bottom, done handling modify events. All right. And so in this guy, we are going to, what did I say? Parse out the old image and the score. So let's grab the old image. And so we need the old image key. So it's case sensitive, so be careful. And let's grab the old score now. It's equal to old image. And then we need score. So going back over here. So we need score, and then the key is N because it's a number type. So then we put in N. All right, cool. So now we have the old score. And let's do the same thing for the new image. So new image is equal to record, DynamoDB, new image. And then new score is going to be equal to new image, score. And this is exactly like the old score. And then we're going to write a quick little if statement to check for change. So let's do that. So we'll say if old score is not equal new score, then print something. Print scores changed. And let's show the old score versus the new score. So the old score is equal to string old score. And then we'll say the new score is equal to string new score, right? So now if there's a change event and it's X change here, we're going to print the old and the new. And then finally, let's move on to the remove. Excuse me, this should actually have been handle modify. Okay, so this step is going to take similar to the first one, except that we're not going to have an old image. We're only going to have a new image. Sorry, excuse me, it's the reverse. So we're only going to have an old image and we're not going to have a new image. So let's do the same kind of boilerplate that we had before. So handling remove events. And then done handling remove events. And so 3 steps here. So 3A is parse old image like we did before. 3B is going to be parse the values. And then 3C is just print it out. Okay, so let's grab the old image. Record, DynamoDB, old image, case sensitive, cool. And then we're going to grab the player ID out of that. So old player ID, old image, and then player ID, and then S, because it is a string type. And then we're just going to print out, hey, this thing was removed. Something like that. So let's actually say row removed with player ID equal to old player ID. All right. So hopefully this kind of gave you some insight into how these functions actually work and how to kind of parse out the values. So from here, I'm going to copy this function and I'm going to go back into the console and paste it into our Lambda function. So let's go back over there now. All right, folks, so we're back in the Lambda console. So I'm going to remove the existing code that was given to us by default, and I'm going to paste in the code that we just wrote. And just for your information, I'm going to be making this code available for you. So if you want to try this yourself, it's going to be below in the description section of the video, so you can hook this stuff up all on your own. So after it's pasted in, I'm going to click save. All right. So now it's saved. So the next step is to add the DynamoDB to Lambda trigger. So you can do this in one of 2 ways. You can add the trigger over here from the Lambda perspective, and this will work perfectly. However, I prefer to do it from the DynamoDB side. So there's absolutely no difference. I'm just showing you one way. So DynamoDB, go to tables, and then our game events table, and then triggers. Going to create a trigger, existing function, and then here's our processor. Going to leave the batch size as 100. This is by default, and we're going to enable the trigger right away. One thing to keep in mind is that if you don't have the right permissions for your Lambda function, you'll get an error as soon as you click create. So this is kind of a good way to test whether or not you have the right permissions attached to the role that you've associated with the Lambda function. So we're going to click create, and you can see that mine worked perfectly. So let's go over to the item section, and we're going to create an item, and I have something prepared to add in. So this is what I was originally going to add. If we come over here and we change this to text, there's a neat trick where you can just paste in a JSON and it'll kind of follow it'll use your keys as the column names. And we're going to click save. So again, as a reminder, that should have triggered a insert event. And now I'm going to change the score to 175. Change that to 175. Click on save. So that should have triggered a modify event on our Lambda. And then the last step is to do the remove. So delete. Are you sure you want to delete? Yes, I am sure. And again, that should have triggered the remove event. So now let's go over to Lambda and see if there are any metrics to indicate that this was successfully invoked. Going to monitoring. And there's our invocation. Right, so we had one invocation. And this may be kind of confusing because we did 3 separate operations. But the way Lambda processing works on DynamoDB Streams is that it may group together multiple change events into one Lambda invocation. And that's what the batch size that I was talking about earlier refers to. If you set that really high, then you can group together many events in one invocation. If you set it really low, then you group together only so few events in one invocation. So let's go over to CloudWatch now and verify that the metrics are actually there and that we have actual logs. Going to logs, going to game event processor, going to the stream. All right, cool. So it looks like, let me change this to text so it's easy to read. Okay, cool. So let's see what we got here. So the first step was printing the event. So this was the event, this line here, and then handling insert event, and then cool. So new row added with player ID equals this. Awesome. And then it was done handling. And then it went to the modify event, which is down here, and then it worked perfectly. So it was able to detect the old score was 150 and the new score is 175. And then down to the remove event, so we can see that the row was removed with player ID, blah, 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 blah. So it looks like things worked here pretty seamlessly. And thanks so much for watching. And if you have any topics you'd like me to cover, drop me a message below in the comments section. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks so much, folks, and I'll see you next time.